Welcome. Today we're diving into OpenAI's DevDay announcements. I'm Kevin DeWalt, and I'm joined by my colleagues Justin, Ben, and Cam from ProLego. I am also thrilled to welcome Marcus Zethras from Predly, joining us from Stockholm, Sweden. Say hi, Marcus.
Hello, guys.
Predly has extensive practical experience building AI solutions, and we're thrilled to have Marcus on the call. And Marcus is going to leave his contact information in the comments in case you want to reach out to him. Well, a couple of days ago, OpenAI announced many improvements to its models and services. And by now, you are, of course, flooded with reactions in every social media feed, everywhere, by people taking every claim at face value and talking about how groundbreaking and transformation it is. And of course, as in all these kind of instances, we're only going to know as time progresses how impactful everything is. And we're huge fans of OpenAI at ProLego. Obviously, these guys can ship, and we are all benefiting from their vision and progress. But at the same time, we want to actually look past the hype and do a deeper dive into the realistic implications for your projects and kind of look past the hype to talk about what you could expect. So the ProLego team, before the announcement, we hypothesized what could be truly game-changing improvements based on the type of client work that we're doing. And we came up with a list. And so our list was a GPT-5 model that had a leap in reasoning like GPT-3 to GPT-4, that sort of jump, or a GPT-4 that was running 100x faster or 100x cheaper. And so why did we come up with this list? For the most part, because when you actually start working with these models, you realize that they still struggle with complex reasoning tasks. But you can overcome many of them by calling the APIs multiple times. For instance, if you're asking OpenAI to GPT-4 to solve a logic problem, make it do the same thing 10 times and then tell it to pick the best one, you can get a better answer. Unfortunately, that is really slow and really expensive. And it just isn't practical for a lot of projects. Well, we didn't get any of these three, but we did get some initial announcements. And the five biggest ones that we're going to cover on the call today are JSON mode, context window increases, multimodal, assistance APIs, and GPTs. So I put them in this order because I think as you go through them, the amount of information and the sort of ambiguity about the impact is probably a longer discussion. So we're going to consider each one of them in order by describing what it is and then offering a quick opinion about what the potential impacts are. I'm going to try to keep each one of these to about 5 minutes, and I'm going to interrupt the discussions to answer any of your questions and or opinions if you think of me. So if you think I'm crazy, then please jump in and let me know if you think I'm crazy or if I'm an idiot. So jump in and let us know, and I will post your questions up to the screen. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So I believe the first question on the agenda is JSON mode. So Justin, do you want to go ahead and tell us what is OpenAI's JSON mode and why is it the greatest thing since the splitting of the atom? Okay, I'm kidding about that, but
yeah, I don't know about the greatest thing, but I think it's a useful thing. Like you were saying in the intro, it's maybe not earth-shattering, groundbreaking, or any of those kind of extreme descriptions, but it's a quality of life improvement for sure. So what JSON mode is we have the ability to get a structured JSON response back from an OpenAI call to the API. Previously, we could just get text back. And so the scenarios in which you might want JSON structured output rather than text out is if you're looking for specific what information structured in a specific way. So let's give you a simple example, because last week we were talking about a RAG application. And part of that RAG application is I would have OpenAI or GPT create several variations of a question. Mm-hmm. And I would say, okay, GPT, give me these variations and give them in a numbered list or a dashed list. And then when I got the response, I would have to manually parse that information, parse the list out. So with JSON response, I could instead say, hey, give me a JSON blob with the questions as entries in a JSON list. So anytime we're looking for sort of structured information, whether it's lists or mappings or nested lists and mappings, we can get that directly as a JSON object without having to parse text. And so that's potentially useful. Anytime we want, like I said, extract or have GPT give you a list of something, give you some mappings for something, we can get that directly and skip the parsing of text. A potential sort of not complication, but another consideration is we can get the JSON from GPT, but especially if it's like key value mappings, well, what's the schema of that JSON? We still have to describe how exactly we want the JSON formatted. And even though we get structurally correct JSON back, we need to make sure we're giving enough explicit instructions so that we can programmatically unpack and decipher what's in that JSON object.
So what is the innovation from the JSON mode, and what did you, because I see what you guys have built. You return JSON in a lot of the situations. What does the JSON mode give you that you didn't have before?
Just the ability to get that structured data object back. So previously we would always just get text back. And if we wanted to pull out certain things like a list from that text, we'd have to write a parser to go through, find the list, look for new line breaks or whatever it is to extract that structured list.
Oh.
Now with JSON mode, we get a data object back. So we can load that straight into Python, index it, get keys, map to values. So it's an easier way to work with data coming back from GPT if we know that data can fit into a certain programmatic structure.
So, but when I would use ChatGPT, I would say, give me this example back in JSON mode, because I'm like doing a demo or something. And it would usually do that after a couple of tries. You couldn't do that with the API before, or would it just not always give it to you?
You usually could. I see Ben coming off of mute, so he might have something to add to this as well. Usually could, but it would be, I think, more trial and error. So maybe it would be a JSON blob in between triple backticks that you'd have to search for, and then load that through a JSON loads in Python. It was a few extra steps in parsing. And
it should be guaranteed now when you use that JSON mode that it is actually like guaranteed to parse. It might not necessarily be exactly what you want, but before, you could, if you ask it to generate JSON, it might generate something that is like 99% correct, but then there's a little mistake in it somewhere and it won't actually parse.
Okay.
So the JSON mode should be correct.
Also, one thing I want to add is the parsing isn't necessarily the problem. It's the fact that you don't know what to parse every time, because sometimes it can include backticks, sometimes it can include quotes. It's like there's a non-deterministic output previously for what you have to parse. So you had to put in all these different cases that you might expect. And then, when you run your application for a demo, you get the one case that you didn't expect.
Okay, Marcus, you look like you've got some scars from doing this as well.
I think everyone has been really scratching their head and having really challenging times with iterating and with different expected data output structures, and then you get the least one that you wanted, and So this is a pretty good innovation that they're bringing, and just kind of over the weekend before they announced this, I was exploring a Python library called Instructor, which uses a pedantic validation methodology and retries if the validation has failed, which I think is a really good library that you could combine both with the legacy models if you don't have the JSON mode enabled yet, or if you want to go with an open source model where you don't have the JSON mode enabled yet.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So am I fair to conclude to say nice incremental feature, not earth-shattering? Not splitting the atoms. Is that a good conclusion?
I think so. Yeah, not splitting atoms, but it's useful.
Okay. All right. Next on our list, we're going to talk about context window increases. Cam, take it away. And you may have to context size. You may have to just define context size increases in case there's some people watching who don't know what that is.
Sure. So the context size is the number of tokens that you can put into the model. Previously, I think the maximum context window was 32,000 tokens. This update brought it up to 128,000 tokens, which is quite a bit bigger. And I think it's now the largest large language model like input window. I think previously it was Claude 2 at around 90 or 100,000 tokens.
I think that's right. Yeah.
So yeah, this is, I think, a really great improvement. The first thing that I think it improves is longer chat history. So if you're just interacting with the model in like a chat type scenario where it's quick messages back and forth, just the history that it can go through and, you know, like remember things is much longer. So you can draw back to previous things that you were talking about. A more interesting benefit that this provides is a potential replacement for some RAG applications. And I say potential replacement. So the benefit of like using this long context window instead of a RAG system is that assuming that what you have can fit in this 128,000 context window, there's no longer a need to store like a vector database to search through. You don't need to search and find the relevant information to put into the context when you ask your question. And also just having more data that it can reason over if you can put it all in the context. Also, it might be able to draw different connections between parts of the data. The drawback is that could get really expensive really fast. I think if you max out the context window for the input, it gets to be like $1, a little over $1 every call.
Yeah.
So like,
wait a minute, Cam, I thought there was a price decrease. Are you saying
this is with the price decrease? So yeah, if money's no object and time is no object, go for it. But you know, is it really the smartest thing to do? That it depends, of course, on your application. If you're looking to draw, you know, like references between different pieces, like if you have a book and you're like, I need to know how these things from all these different chapters connect, and the whole book fits in the context window, that's probably a good application for it. If you're asking like a specific question, but that, you know, the answer is in a single chapter, why put in the whole book when if you have a RAG system that can find the relevant chapter, just put in that chapter, so you're not you know, wasting tokens. And also something that I think people are still looking into is, can it actually use all of the data in the context window?
That's my concern. Yeah.
I've seen two different things. One, that it can use the data in a like a U shape, so it sees everything at the beginning and at the end, misses stuff in the middle. But I've also seen someone else say it's more of like a W shape, so it just misses like intermittent chunks. I was just doing some quick testing, not extensive, but before this call, I downloaded the book Understanding Machine Learning from Theory to Algorithms, and I put in like the first 200 pages and asked it questions from different chapters, like one from chapter 1, one from chapter 7, and one from chapter 12. And it was able to answer each question, and I asked it to provide a reference, and it referenced back to the correct section for two of the latter two questions. The first one that came from the first chapter, it got the right answer, but it just referenced the whole book, not the specific section.
Yep.
But still, I think that was promising. But again, also whatever's in this machine learning book is probably in its training data too. So it can probably answer the question without the book, which is why I asked it to provide a reference to the sections. So yeah, I mean, it seems promising for using the context so far. You know, in my 15-minute experiment.
Other opinions? I guess it's one of the things that, as long as it works, it seems like there's nothing but upside other than price. It's just another option.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, let's be clear, like the retrieval part of RAG sucks. That's the hardest part. So if we don't have to do that, then, or there's
Right.
less of that. And I guess something I'm always keeping in mind too is how, this is somewhat selfish, I guess, but I mean, it really applies to any product manager, any analytics leader who's doing these things. How quickly can I figure out if is it going to work or not? And if I know a RAG solution is better, but I got to do like embeddings and all this other work, if I can just take 15 minutes and take my 300-page policy document, throw it up there and start asking questions, say, am I kind of getting what I need? Then it's worth spending additional time on. And we run into this every single time. We're running into it right now on some projects, right? It'd be the client's trying to figure out how good is it. And if we could do this, we could probably get to those answers pretty quickly.
Yeah, because time is also money too.
Yeah.
Right. The call is expensive, but developer time, adds up too.
So Cam, I had a couple of questions. So did you notice like a big slowdown in response when it was?
Yes.
So how long did it take? I was curious for each of those queries.
An hour? No, just kidding.
No. So for each query, the input is essentially the same size, right? The same text for the book, and then like the question size is slightly different, but that hardly matters.
Yeah.
The first answer took 26 seconds, the second took 12, and the third took 43 seconds.
Was that with the turbo and using the prompt as input where you put in the actual full book text?
Yep. Yeah, the first 200 pages or so. It couldn't fit the full book, but like the first 200 pages is still a lot.
$1.50 or something.
It cost Kevin $1.50 or something. $1.07 for each call.
All right, got a couple of other. Looks like Sumit is suggesting that they only touched lost in the middle slightly. So I guess maybe Sumit's doing some testing and found that there's some lost recall with text in the middle. So I think it sounds like this is just something that's going to be, just require more evaluation. It's hard for me to imagine there's not some trade-off from giving it more data that it doesn't need versus exactly what it needs, just intuitively there. It's like every other engineering decision, pros and cons. All right. Next is multimodal from me. All right. Came with, let me get back to our window here. Came with some visual aids on this one. So, boom. I did some experiments. Let me just say, what is multimodal? Multimodal is the ability to, it's actually, should see, get their full list here from their announcement. Multimodal basically means handling different data types, primarily images, sound, structured data, something other than just text. And the three they list are effectively inputting images, generating images, or text to speech. I didn't spend any time considering text to speech because honestly, we've never had a use case for it on any of our projects. It seems pretty cool, and it would be great to try at some point, but I don't know if we have a client application for it yet. I don't think there's any doubt that ingesting images is nothing but upside. And I think that for me, that's probably the biggest. This is the most exciting one, I think. If I had to pick one thing on there that would impact our projects more than anything else, it's this. Just because we have client projects where they have PDFs with tables, or we see PDFs with like diagrams of widgets, or whatever, and the ability to ingest images. There's just so many situations where we could have saved a lot of work by doing this. I mean, Cam, I think about the project you worked on about ingesting brokerage statements from tables. Being able to spot the right one, I mean, this could have saved you months maybe of work just being able to. So this one is potentially a game changer. Longer term, I am actually more, I think the upside of image generation is going to be even bigger. I just don't think we're there yet, because there are so many times we see where it's easier to communicate concepts to people with images instead of text or spreadsheets. I mean, if you look at a lot of the benefits of like graph technology, is the fact that people can visualize a graph, and it makes sense when you're trying to see different entities connected together. And so data visualization, image visualization, this is all really powerful stuff. We're just not there yet. So as a test, I tried to get it to develop a workflow diagram. And so I gave it the prompt that said, write me a workflow diagram for parsing an email, like ingesting it, sending it to GPT-4, classifying it as, is important or not. And this is the best one it came out with from a couple of tries. And if I had to demonstrate a workflow process to a client, I'd be back into Google Sheets because there's nothing here. I'd be back doing my little colorful blocks in Google Sheets or asking our designer for help because there's nothing that I could do. And then I thought, all right, let's just try something easier. Let's make a YouTube thumbnail for this event. And so I described our event today. I said there's going to be 6 of us. We need 6 avatars. I want to have OpenAI DevDay in text, and then, hot or not. And it just came out with craziness. Nothing I could really use. Not even anything that was really inspired from a content perspective. It was just in the prompts, I couldn't get it to generate text correctly. And I could not guide it down a path to saying what I want. I couldn't get it to actually have 6 faces as avatars. And now I'm just realizing there's 5 of us on the call. So for whatever reason I had in my mind, there was 6 of us on the call. So I was putting up 6 avatars. It would not get off of 8, no matter what I did, how I wrote the prompts. And so I think the multimodal ingestion is exciting for me. I'm not sure about the rest of everything else at this point. So image generation, great. Everything else, I'd say that's hot. Everything else is a not. So that's my vote. Who wants to weigh in on multimodal?
Sure, I'll weigh in, but I think I agree. I mean, in image ingestion, I think it opens up a lot of possibilities. Image generation, and maybe this is just me and the kind of things I'm interested in. I'm less interested in that. I think if you could have it where you're describing, generate compelling explanations given some input, that would be really powerful, which doesn't seem like it's there yet. But I'm excited to try out the image ingestion, the GPT vision piece.
Yeah. I mean, I think if I could use the image generation to generate a Visio diagram, like basic workflow, that to me would be, great. Okay, put a user in the corner, put this over here, put a web application there, put a server, put a database, like that kind of stuff would be valuable for me. That specific use case, I don't see it. I don't see where we're getting in that direction at all. But just me.
It could have saved us a lot of time on architecture diagrams in the last couple of years.
No kidding, man. Yeah. That's right. Anybody disagree with this one, or is this pretty much a similar opinion?
I believe Canva has a plugin for using GPT to do exactly what you're saying.
To make workflow diagrams?
I'm not sure about workflow diagrams, but I'm looking now. Streamline your content writing workflow.
Okay. All right.
I'm not sure if it's exactly that, but I know I did see a while ago, and I didn't look too into it, that they had integration with GPT.
I would be curious to see how they're going to get better than I can. I mean, what Canva's able to do that overcomes the limitations I described. But
yeah,
a technique that actually might work really well for generating diagrams is asking ChatGPT to write code that generates a diagram. So either asking it to generate like an SVG file directly, or write code to generate some kind of layout of elements might work really, really well.
Interesting. Yeah.
I've tried that and seen some good results. I just want to add one other kind of use case with the multimodality that I see as super exciting, and it's basically like in the multimodal, like image ingestion, and the use cases, like we're seeing so many like different dashboards today that, like, I don't know, if you go into Grafana or like your AWS, you just kind of get bloated with all of these dashboards
Yeah.
in so many different systems. And like one technique that I see potentially, like if you're a product building company and you have a dashboard, kind of taking a snapshot and then ingesting that, so GPT can visually analyze that dashboard for you. Or you can do the other way around. If it, like you have the raw data that is behind the graphs of that dashboard, and then shooting that into GPT to kind of use code interpreter, which you now can do from the API. But like I think then you like utilize your existing systems, your existing dashboards and apps, but provide kind of a intelligence layer and a visual walkthrough on top of that.
Yeah, that's really clever, Marcus, because you could effectively, like you said, use the same visualization layer, but get around to the data engineering, especially if you could do some, SQL query on top of that, and like do some of the data processing and formatting to get the information in the right format that somebody's looking for. Yeah, I could see that being powerful.
It's kind of like using LLM to summarize text. You could use it to summarize an image.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. And that image would be, in that case, a dashboard.
Yeah. And we know the vision capability is pretty good with reading text and things like that. So that seems like something that it should be able to do a good job of.
Yeah. And one use, I can't remember exactly when I came across this, but it was like a few years ago, some like a financial analyst using it instead of the like raw time series data to analyze like a stock prediction and so on. They used the image data back then, and I can kind of see that like with GPT image ingestion, that like this could actually be a potential of, okay, just feed it with a stock trace, and then analyze the volatility and do different like time series forecasting just on an image.
Yeah, I'll have to just like some of my own like slice skepticism, cynicism here is that all these people that are into like the stock chart readers that have like, this is a double dip loop, like I look at all this stuff, like there's zero evidence of any of this stuff being the slice bit of predictive. I mean, you might as well just be shaking your magic beans and hoping to pick stocks. But I can imagine the fraudsters out there and the scams going to come out of everybody with the AI generated technical analysis of stock images. And oh my God, what we could get into with some of this stuff. Anyway, cool. Great. Really interesting points. All right. I think next, now we're getting into sort of the, I guess the more, complex and interesting stuff is the, Assistance API, which I will confess I have not even dug into, but I'm going to bring up on the screen here, Ben, so that it's here in case you want to point to something specifically. So tell us about Assistance API Retrieval Code Interpreter.
Yeah, so this is kind of exposing the functionality that will be in this custom GPTs feature as part of the API. So I don't know, maybe would it make more sense to talk about GPTs first and then talk about the assistance?
We could do that. Yeah, that works for me.
If you don't mind, I think that might make more
great.
sense. I wasn't aware of this again until I listened to the I actually had a chance to listen to the keynote, and I was like, okay, so this is what this is. It's like there's GPTs is the sort of easy way to create an assistant interactively, and then the assistance API is how you would do it programmatically or in an application that maybe you're not deploying onto their platform, but using within your organization.
All right. Well, I've heard on Twitter and LinkedIn that GPTs is going to overtake the App Store, and it's going to, be how everyone's going to consume everything in the world. So, Marcus, what do you think? What are GPTs, and is it as great as everyone's saying it is?
So I've been lucky enough to be on the like early rollout schedule for the GPTs. So nice. I've actually like been hands-on all day building and experimenting, and what we kind of alluded to a bit earlier with like cost, like time to develop things is a cost, and what GPTs is doing is like actually two things. One, even if you're a skillful developer, like this is so easy to create like valuable products just using natural language to create bespoke, custom built GPT models that basically anyone just using natural language can put together something that is useful and niche for a specific task. And kind of the ingredients that you combine are that you set up this system prompt, like a custom instructions telling kind of how the agent or the GPT in this case would act and follow instructions. Then you can add like a knowledge base to it. So you upload files, and it can use the code interpreter. That's the third one, and it can also use web searching. And the fifth component is that you can then also add function calling. And all of this is just like a super simple interface where you're chatting to generate all of these 5 ingredients into your prompt. And it's also coming back to what we discussed earlier with the image generation. So you get the generative DALL-E 3 logo for your app. So you can kind of see all of this as a new Slack channel that like has a specific purpose and its specific conversations where you have provided all of these tools in a very simple way. So what I've been building and kind of experimenting with
do you have something you can handy to demo? Because I think I'm not on the early access list. I thought I was, and then I don't know, maybe they saw I was making this live, then they kicked me off of it. But I think they've reverted me lower because it's not working for me. GPT is not working for me very well right now.
Let's see.
You guys stop share. Maybe you can
window. Can you see that?
Not. Let me see. There we go.
All right. So
I'm going to make it a little bit bigger to see if we can get the. Oh, that didn't do anything, did it?
So maybe just to start with, this is one interaction where I'm using an app that I came across that is creating a code and then finally zipping it all together into an application. So I asked it to create a Pong application in CSS and HTML, and the score should be visible in the background if it's playing. And it just kind of plans all of the steps for me. So I'm so far like nothing really new, but then like towards the end, it asks me to like download all of this into a zip file. If I download this and this has expired, but I've already downloaded it here before and can bring it up. This is kind of what I get.
So it generated all this code just from the prompts.
Just from the prompt, or like from this single prompt here towards the beginning. This is like one probably a bit more like a technical example where I'm just using this. This is a public application that someone has created, and I asked it to create like this web app, and it just kind of did what I instructed. Maybe I didn't get exactly because I wanted to have the score visible in the background, but as you see, no score here. But it kind of works, which I think is really cool.
So,
but maybe,
so this GPT, if you put it up on for like public domain, or put it in the public domain. So if I went and looked at it, I would be to see the history of what you have on the screen, and the bottom it would say download the zip file, and I could run it on my computer. Is that the idea?
No, so the idea is rather that this is like a bespoke bot. So you will have your own interactions with this GPT that you see here. And this is like a code project generator GPT. So when you interact with this one, you will kind of have all of the capabilities at your fingertip here.
Okay, so this is a code generation GPT, not a Pong game making GPT.
No, exactly.
Okay,
this is a code generation. I've just been fiddling around a little bit with create a Spotify music playlist. So this one has like a interaction and connection towards Spotify. So you could like ask it to create a playlist for Christmas. Now, I haven't really gotten the authentication to fully work, and it's also been a bit buggy since it's still in like a preview mode. So I'm not sure kind of we will get the response that we are hoping for. Okay, it's not really integrating directly with my, or is it? It is. So here, this playlist was actually generated by me using GPT. This GPT. I haven't didn't kind of run the full circle before. So
interesting. So it then it created the playlist and it created that, and it put it into Spotify, and
yep. So
are they all Christmas ones? I'm just curious if we have any, like,
these are all Christian Christmas songs. Yeah. But I think we went a little bit into the deep end of the pool with like code generation and Spotify integrations. I think just to kind of see the process. So GPT, anyone can kind of build these GPTs themselves. So like, I don't know if we want to come up with something here on the spot. We basically just enter what kind of bespoke GPT we want to build, and what it does then. Shall we run an example?
Let's do it. Who's got an idea?
Can you upload files or documents to support this?
Yeah, I think.
Okay, I have potentially one. So I have I'll just dig it up here. I have a custom instruction for ChatGPT, which I call golf mode.
Okay.
And when I say golf mode, it does all these things, and it has examples. I'm gonna share this with you. I think I can share it. What's the easiest way? I'm gonna paste it in our DevDay, our script here at the bottom, and I'll just tag you here. That's it. This is only relevant for my the club that I'm a member with. So what this application does is I wrote a custom instruction so that when I take the ChatGPT on the golf course, I can actually say, I just finished hole 1 and I hit my drive into the woods. Then I recovered. Then I hit the green. Then I 3-putted. And then I said my best shot, my worst shot. And it captures all that in a running tally in tabular format that I can paste into Google Sheets later.
Okay. Yeah.
So when I heard about GPTs, I thought, okay, I could make a GPT for golf mode for my own course, which is Savannah Golf Club, in case anybody's wondering. So it's the
yeah, but so let's try that. So like it's a little bit of an iterative process to get kind of to that
okay.
customer. So if I understand correctly, you should like publish scores and
Well, I shared the actual prompt that I used. So can you, if we just paste that in there, would that
where
work?
did you share it?
I put it into the Google Doc we're sharing.
Okay.
And I put it at the very bottom and tagged you.
Let's see.
It's at the bottom. You should see where it says when I say golf mode.
Okay. Here.
Yeah.
Do something like this. I'll just copy that. So it's not copying from it for some reason. That's but I think yes, for the purpose of this like that's
Yeah. We can skip that one. Yep.
Publish all scores for each hole to a Google Sheet. And I will say what shots I've hit. See if it can interpret this.
So is my frame of reference that this is a way for me to make an app that generates what I'm trying to do with custom instructions a good way to think about it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Exactly. No, it's
Eagle Eye.
yeah. Yeah, it's not really. It's still a little bit in development mode.
Yeah.
But, as you can see here, like you can provide it like conversation starters, these custom instructions, and this is probably where you would want. Let's see if my. Okay, now I see why I cannot copy because I'm in. For some reason, but this is where you want to put in the instructions, and then you could upload like a specific file, and you can allow web browsing, and these actions is really cool. So what you can do here is you upload any API schema. So basically what you do is you could give access to more or less any web application on the web. And what happens then is your GPT can interact with authentication to, say, your Facebook or your Google Calendar using Zapier actions, for example, or directly if you want to do that. And I think like this opens up a lot of exciting use cases when you start building on this. And yeah, so I've been more or less kind of tinkering around a little bit here. So building my own Spotify playlist, and then you can go in and edit this one. Yeah. What else? Yeah, I've been trying also like a synthetic data uploading. So there's this like external service, and then I could just build this GPT that extracts synthetic data, or you can upload the synthetic data, which is really this like bespoke applications. And kind of the direction we are going is that, okay, you're already seeing here that this is becoming like an app store. And I've been looking into like there are already some external like app stores popping up. So you have like GPTs Hunter as an example, where you can
Took 2 days. Yeah.
It took 2 days,
Okay,
and you
so
already this many GPTs.
Yeah. So this is. I want to also be as quick because I want to hear let you guys weigh in on this. Especially I want to hear about AI assistants and everything. Here's my general take on this. I think long term, I love this for many reasons, not the least of which is for companies like ours, the ability to have a path deploying solutions to customers' environments where we can say, we're going to build you something and you're going to put it on your internal GPT store in the enterprise would be huge, because it just allows us to build things for them where we don't have to, try and redo their workflows, infrastructure, APIs, to like all of that crufty hard work to deploy things. I love this idea. My concern in the short term is two things. One is I think when you start getting at anything that gets complicated, it's very tough to get more than like an 80% correct solution with how good GPT-4 is right now at reasoning. So that's my concern. The second is that just from a discovery perspective, I can see a bazillion Me Too, very similar GPTs out there that do kind of the same thing, and discovery and distribution is going to be darn near impossible, like worse than the iPhone App Store. But my near-term skepticism is outweighed by my long-term enthusiasm. That's all I'm going to say because it's just my initial reaction. I want to hear from some more informed opinions. So, Ben, do you want to jump in and talk about AI assistance and how it relates? I think Marcus probably covered a lot of the.
Yeah, well, it was really interesting seeing the GPT side of it, because the assistance API is kind of like what's going on under the hood. And there's also some interesting differences in what they've enabled first, in GPTs versus what's available in the API. So basically, it's the API version of GPTs, and it kind of breaks down into a bunch of objects that you create. And something that's a little different with the assistance API versus the previous APIs that we've seen is that assistance API is very stateful. So like you're creating these objects, updating them, kind of managing them. You make API calls that start processes on them, and then you check the status and stuff. So it works a little differently. But basically, the main thing is an assistant, and that has a model. So you can choose which model you want it to use. Then there's a set of custom instructions and associated files. And then the model also has tools. So there's 3 different tools that are available right now. And for anybody who's tried to program an agent, like Cam and I were working on agents earlier, it's like this is all the same language and kind of things that you would build if you're trying to build an agent. So there's tools, and the 3 that are available right now is code interpreter. So you can use code interpreter, function calling, which there's some interesting updates to. So that would be like if you wanted to interact with other APIs or do your, like if you're building an internal assistant, you could have your own special secret sauce functions. And then there's retrieval. So retrieval is kind of interesting because that's the custom OpenAI RAG stuff basically. And then the other important kind of object that you have is a thread. This is kind of unfortunately named, in my opinion. I think it should have been called like a conversation. But that's basically a message history or a history of interaction. So it's like you have your assistant, then when a user goes to work with it, you start a thread, and then there's the sequence of back and forth messages there where you have the user messages, and then you kind of toss it over the fence to the assistant, and then it comes back with tool responses, messages that have function calling that you could run yourself, put new messages back in, etc.
So having the words functions and use thread, but threads like chat thread, not computer architecture.
Yeah. It's like a conversation thread.
That's like
it's unfortunate. I really wish they would have called it conversations. And then these threads or conversations, they hold messages, but there's some differences with the messages. So the messages can also contain files. So they can hold references to files that tools create. So for example, the code interpreter can create files, like in Marcus's example, that zip file that it would have prepared and downloaded, that would be, like the message that comes back from the assistant can, contain a reference to that file, so you can download it. You can also, the user can upload files, so messages can hold user uploaded files. And then there's some mechanisms where you can share the files with the tools and the assistant. So that's like you can upload files for retrieval and different things like that. But that's just kind of the basic outline of how things work and how the pieces fit together for these GPTs.
So it sounds like there's a tremendous amount of flexibility that they're designing into this, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think just looking over it, you can kind of see there's some limitations in, kind of like what pieces have access to what information. Like, I'm not sure if, I don't think, because like there's like the assistant itself holds some files, so that would be like the sort of custom data. I don't think a user can like put new files into the assistant, but you could put in files that might go into a tool, right? So there's some boundaries between different things, but yeah, overall there is a lot of flexibility.
So that it doesn't have like a file system.
It's there. So my understanding is there's an API where you can sort of upload files and access them by ID, and then the tools can create files that can also be accessed. How it's sort of sandboxed by user, I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, there's this file creation and access capability. And then, so one other interesting thing. So there's some limitations. It doesn't support streaming output yet. It doesn't support DALL-E as a tool, and it doesn't support images in messages yet. So these might be things that are supported in GPTs, but they're not supported in the Assistance API yet. And then one other really interesting thing that I noticed is that, and this is an update to the function calling capability in general, is that a response can call multiple functions in one response. So whether it's tools or like if you've provided additional functions that it can call, one interaction could say, hey, call this function with this set of parameters, this function with this set of parameters, this function with this set of parameters, and then you could run those in parallel. Tools could be running in parallel. So there's a lot of there's like this new capability where this thing could like dispatch multiple outside sources of information at a time and then bring them back together. So that's kind of a new general capability, is multiple functions being called at once.
So Ben, we got a question here which I want to let you answer in a second, but just so can you use the Assistance API outside of GPTs, or is it primarily for? I think what I'm getting lost in is the difference between where you'd use each one.
So my understanding is that basically GPTs are sort of like the easy wrapper around the Assistance API. Okay. So under the hood, they're using the Assistance API basically with some additional features that they might have, and then like some of those things like the asking questions or pasting API URLs in behind the scenes, they're kind of using their own function calling capability and stuff to stitch it together.
So you'll probably never use the GPTs and write everything by hand with code and just use the API. Is that it?
If you wanted more control over it, you would use the Assistant API.
Okay. You saw how it went with the golf example earlier.
Yeah.
Right.
One. So to answer this person's question, what are your thoughts about the new threads instead of myself?
There's a follow-on here, but
memory module. Okay. Yeah. So this is actually something else that I was going to mention too. So an important part of this functionality here is that this thread is, it sort of represents like a user's interactions. Like you start a new conversation with the assistant, you have a new thread, and these threads are not limited in length, but they will be automatically trimmed somehow to fit into the context of the model. Okay. So you don't have to worry about the context being too big. And there's no limit to the size of the thread. So as far as I know, it's like that is all stored. So and there's different ways you can retrieve different files or information or whatever from the threads. But yeah, you don't have to worry about context size.
So it's just like talking to somebody who can remember the last 5 minutes of the conversation, but forgets everything before that. Is that it?
Yeah, or maybe it has some smarter way of condensing. It's not really specific about how it does it. The documentation, I don't think, says, oh, it just throws out the last, maybe it does something more.
Yeah.
Something that I was looking for and I didn't find was, is there a way to control what the maximum context size should be? Because it seems to me like you have to use either GPT 3.5 Turbo or 4 with some of the functionality like retrieval. And it seems to me like you might want to limit it so the context didn't grow to the full 128K all the time, because that seems like it could really slow things down.
It get pretty pricey.
Yeah.
It's going to cost more to keep track of my score for a round of golf than it would be to pay for the round. So
yeah, it wouldn't be an issue if you started a new conversation, but I mean, depending on how you wanted the model or the assistant to work, I could see running into that.
Got it. All right. Any other comments on Assistance API before we got about 5 minutes left? Maybe we'll take some final thoughts from everybody before we wrap things up. And it was a great overview. Marcus and Ben, great. I think that was really formative for me because I haven't had a chance to look at either one, and that was really helpful. All right, well then let's just get the final comments. OpenAI's announcements, hot or not? What's the general reaction? And maybe we'll be fair to the great folks at OpenAI and not judge them based on the hype we're seeing for people who haven't actually read into this stuff, but based on what they are promoting. It's living up to expectations or just sort of incremental, nice to have improvements?
I see things in 3 lanes. One, I think the thing that's really new and is very interesting and I can't wait to try to play with is the multimodal vision input, image input. And so that's new and that's pretty cool, especially if that works well. We can read in figures from documents. I think the other bucket, second bucket, would be things like the Assistance API and the JSON mode. And there's nothing earth-shattering there, but it's nice. It's convenient to not necessarily have to track your own message history or to parse text to get things that are structured out of that text that should be there. So those are definitely quality of life features I think that we'll end up using. And then the third one that Marcus described is the GPTs, and I think that's interesting because it gives access to a lot of the functionality to people who don't necessarily have a technical background. The thought that came to my mind, having 2 kids in school and having some background in education, is if I'm a teacher writing a new course or delivering my course, I could take all the course content, all my notes, and put them in in a custom GPT, hand that out to the students, and now they have basically a virtual TA that they can ask questions if they're struggling with the material or if they're having some trouble locating something in the material. And so I think it's pulling a lot of things together, but it's kind of expanding the audience of people or the group of people who can make use of some of this technology, which is neat. It's good.
Excellent summary. Anybody else? Ben, Marcus, Cam?
I can just expand a little bit on that. So it's really democratizing kind of the access to creating bespoke GPT models, and it's really interesting with their product launch that they are launching this natural language GPT interface at the same time as launching the Assistance API. Mm-hmm. So you kind of have 2 angles to tackle and build these products. Yeah. And it's kind of unusual that you do that simultaneously. So I'm super excited about kind of the ecosystem and this operating system that comes on top of a GPT, where you can just navigate and across the different GPT apps or GPTs, and it kind of is in the direction that we're OpenAI could become this super app, like a WeChat, which kind of solves all problems in one spot and start automating, and it's almost, you almost have the Slack-like interface already today. So you can just add multi-user chats. You can add connections to your teammates into a specific GPT channel, and then as I said a little bit earlier, that potentially like this could now like thinking several years or maybe several weeks ahead, who knows. Like if this becomes the dominant operating system, then you kind of will have persistent storage. You won't even create external applications with the specific front end. So you just have all memory and history, and then just using these function callings towards backends. So it has like really significant implications on how you build applications and software in the future, I would say. So I'm really excited, and it will be competitive. It's almost like you're opening up Black Friday, where everyone will come rushing and trying to strike a deal and bringing out the best GPTs and into the App Store. And it will be a lot of content coming out of there.
I just can't wait till I get access to it to try it. So far, I just get error messages. So, great. Ben or Cam, any final comments on anything we talked about today? Otherwise, I'll just summarize with my quick I've realized that my summary is more about me and not OpenAI. Talking through this, there's no doubt about it. What they've done here and how fast they've done it is really, really impressive. And in any other normal universe, I'm like, wow, look what these guys built. This is amazing. Except we've had ChatGPT less than a year. And 6 months after they released it, they released GPT-4, which is debatably one of the biggest breakthroughs in human history. So my expectations are so freaking high that they are impossibly to be met by any company, because I just wanted AGI to be here by November, which is really unfair. Anyway, thank you all so much. This was a really good conversation. Marcus, thanks a lot for taking the time of joining us today and sharing some of your experiences. This is really, really valuable, especially hearing what you've been doing hands-on and how it relates to some of your client work is really exciting. At some point, I think we'll have to have another live session where you and I could talk about blockchain and GPTs, which I know you're already thinking about. But we'll be here for 4 hours if we did that. Thank you guys all so much. Have a fantastic day. Thanks for the great questions we got from some people who joined us. Have a great day.
Thanks.
See you later.
Bye.